Hi, everyone. Welcome to another live event. I am Rachel, the online community manager for the Gypsy Nurse, and today we have Mynoucka from Vintage Traveling Nurse joining us to discuss the pros and cons of working as a travel nurse and why travel nursing can be used as the perfect segue to live your life by design. So, thank you so much for joining us today. I cannot wait for what you're going to share with our community today.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. I'm so excited to be joining all of you today. And thank you so much, Rachel, for having me this morning. Thank you, Amber, for reaching out. I really appreciate it. And shout out to the whole Gypsy Nurse community for joining us this morning. I'm so excited to talk to everybody and just kind of share my story and really get into why I feel travel nursing and nursing in general is the perfect segue to create a life that you can be proud of doing the things that you love.
That's amazing. Well, we appreciate you coming on to talk about that. And then I just want to know a few more things about you. How long have you been a travel nurse and how long have you been nursing?
Okay, so I actually started nursing in 2015, and I worked at the bedside for about 3 years. And then I did my first travel nursing assignment in 2018, where I went and took my talents to the West Coast. And I did all of my travel nursing assignments in California. And right now, I am currently working at my local hospital just as a regular staff nurse at the moment, and I have been working there since 2020. So altogether, I have been in the nursing industry for 7 years. I can't believe it, but it's been 7 years. It feels like I just started. So altogether, travel nursing was from October 2018 to February 2020, and then staff nursing all of the other years surrounding that.
Oh, that's so much fun. And I'm sure it does go by so fast. I've
Mhm.
worked here almost 7 years, so it's kind of fun being in that nurse life. I'm not a nurse, but I just appreciate everything that you guys all do. And it's so much fun watching everybody's journey. And
Yes.
so, what made you want to start sharing your journey with everybody else?
Well, that's such a good question. For me, when I decided to go into travel nursing back in 2018, of course, I used YouTube University and Google University to get all of my information. And at the time, I didn't even think to really use social media as a resource. And to be honest, I don't think there was as many resources as we have right now.
Yeah.
Um, I think there were some, but I don't think like people sharing their life as a nurse or as a travel nursing. I don't think that there were as many platforms as we find now. So with time, we're finding more and more people sharing like the behind the scenes, a day in the life, and all of these different things that are extremely helpful. But at the time, I really didn't see that, and so I kind of trial and errored my way to California. And by the grace of God, I got there safely and was able to have a very positive experience there. But my cousin and one of my best friends was actually one of the people that really encouraged me to start a blog, and she suggested it. And I was like, well, what am I going to talk about? Like, I don't really have anything interesting going on. Like, nobody's going to want to, hear about me going to work every day. And she's like, no, like, share how you got to be a travel nurse and how you got into nursing and really share the behind the scenes, because for her, she had used um, social media and YouTube as a resource, and she found it extremely helpful. And she thought that I would be able to do the same. So she really kind of championed me and encouraged me to start it. And so that's when I began on Instagram with a blog, like kind of like a personal blog. And I really didn't even know what that meant, but I knew that I needed some pictures and I knew I needed some sort of like color scheme of some sort. And so I began on Instagram. And then from there, I started a website, and then it's been history since then. So that's kind of how I got started, and and it's very very interesting how it's all just been, one thing is kind of leading to another, and it all began with just a suggestion of like you should start a blog,
Yeah.
and here we are. Here we are.
So great. And you know what my favorite thing is about like your type of people that like just create a blog and you're like, you know what, I guess I will do that is like you did do all of the heavy lifting, all of the work. So then like when, our community reaches out to, different bloggers like yourself, and, all the different things that you do, like they're kind of getting like cutting the cutting it in half, because you already did all of the heavy work, and
Yeah.
so then now they're getting like all of your tips and all of your tricks. So that is just my favorite to watch, like all of you guys just grow and become flourishing into these nurses, and then share it with incoming travelers, because they have so many different things that they see and hear, and it's just like they need people like you to just like rely on, because they get fed some crazy information.
Yes, absolutely. And so what's great about social media is everybody could go on and put whatever they want to on there, but that's a pro and a con. So unfortunately, sometimes people put things on there that's not necessarily the most helpful or the most accurate. But what's beautiful about it is there, like I said, there are so many platforms on there, people of all different kinds of backgrounds and different types of specialties that are willing to share the behind the scenes, the nitty gritty, while they're on the ground working and while they're on assignment. And there are so many people that have even found a really tactful way to take their phones into the hospitals to kind of show what it means to be a registered nurse. And I think that's so important because what we learn in nursing school and what we do in the hospital looks completely different. It blows my mind. Like, I appreciated my nursing school journey, but it is so different. And I think sometimes when we get into the hospitals, it's a little bit of a culture shock, when you get in there and you're like, wait, is this nursing? Like, and for some people it's exciting, and for some people it's nerve wracking, and there's a level of anxiety that can happen when you're doing something that you're not familiar with. So I think it's so cool how people are utilizing their social media platforms to share. And, even with TikTok, like I'm not on TikTok, but there are so many people on TikTok sharing helpful information, and they'll like repurpose it and put it on Instagram. So even I have been able to benefit from getting information on social media. So yeah.
Definitely. And like you said, with, just everyone giving their experience, especially as a traveler,
Hmm.
you're going to find out, you're going to go to one hospital and then go to the next, and it's going to be completely different. So it's always so good to have someone there like yourself to kind of be like, yep, it's going to be a little bit different, but
Yeah.
here's how you adjust. So, um, yeah. So I will let you go ahead and take it away, and I'll come back up when there's more questions and everything like that. But I'll let you talk more about yourself and travel nursing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you. So again, good morning. Happy Monday. Thank you so much for joining me. If you guys see me looking down, I do have some notes because I wanted to make sure that I put my best foot forward this morning and really shared everything that I could with all of you. So I want to go ahead and make sure that I encourage all of you that if you have any questions or if you have any comments or anything, I like to engage, I like to talk. So please be sure to drop it in the comments, and I'll be sure to address them as we are chatting this morning. But again, like Rachel said, I do have a blog, and the blog is Vintage Traveling Nurse on Instagram. And we'll kind of like get into more details with how that got started and everything like that, because that's actually part of my story. So again, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you to the Gypsy Nurse community for reaching out, and just, yeah, let's get right into it. So wanted to go ahead and let you guys know that as far as what I do, I started in nursing back in 2015, like I mentioned, and I had an incredible experience. Right, it was an incredible experience. I wanted to get into something where I would be able to help people, where I would be able to have that in-person interaction, and it definitely gave me that. But one of the things that I experienced, and the reason why I talk about self care so much, is I did begin to experience a level of burnout in 2018. And at that time, I really began to think to myself, like, what are the other different avenues that I can experiment with in nursing? And I always knew of travel nursing, but I didn't really do a lot of research. So I began to really research and find out what it was. And I thought, like, the idea of being able to travel while still being able to work and support yourself, I thought that was an amazing gig. So I went ahead and jumped into travel nursing. So before I did that, I took a little bit of a hiatus. I took some time away and just really took that time to reflect and really get all of my ducks in a row before I jumped into it. Because with us as nurses, we're at the bedside, we're taking care of people, and we're dealing with people on a day-to-day basis and people that are dealing with their own set of issues. So I wanted to make sure I got myself right before I got back into the bedside. So I went ahead, I took a little bit of a hiatus and really made this a journey for myself. And so I live on the East Coast, I live in Florida, and I reached out to a couple different agencies that I had been looking at. So, for anybody who's thinking about getting into travel nursing, one of the first things you want to do, and I don't know how many people we have on here who are currently travel nursing or people who are thinking about getting into it, but if you can drop in the comments whether or not you're currently working as a travel nurse, or if you're thinking about getting into travel nursing, go ahead and drop that in the comments. I'd love to know, but I'll share how I got into it step by step. So what I did is I found out at that time that if you had between 1 to 2 years of experience, that you, I'm not going to say that you're an expert at what you're doing, but you're more comfortable than, say, somebody who has 6 months of experience. So for me, by that point, I had 3 years of experience and I felt comfortable to be able to get into travel nursing. See, with travel nursing, one of the things that it's important to note when you get there, they expect you to hit the ground running, right? You get 1 to 2 days of training. They're not necessarily teaching you how to be a nurse. They're teaching you where to find equipment, what charting system that they're using. But you have to be competent and confident as a nurse to be able to take care of those patients. And as travel nurses, we come in and we fill in the gap and we fill in any of those staffing needs that they have. So they really don't have time to sit there and hold your hands and teach you every single thing that you need to know as a nurse. So you get in there, and I felt, like I said, I had 3 years. I felt pretty comfortable. And by that point, I had started working as a nurse on a progressive care unit floor. And so that's the kind of assignment that I looked for. So I got, first thing that I did is I reached out to an agency that I felt comfortable with. I got linked up with with an with a recruiter. And first thing that I did is I made sure that I verbalized my needs. I was traveling alone, single Black woman, and so I wanted to make sure that I outlined everything that I wanted to do or everything that I needed in order to be comfortable. So I made sure I told him that I wanted somewhere that was diverse. I wanted somewhere that had like a lot of people. I wanted a hospital that had a healthy work environment. So I'm looking up hospitals, I'm looking at different reviews. And so that was kind of like what I did. So one of the things that I think, and one of the disservices that I think we could do with getting into travel nursing is not verbalizing our needs and thinking that by not saying what we want, that we're cutting our legs off from underneath us. It's so important for us to verbalize what it is that you're looking for. If you're offered an assignment on a floor that you know that you're not comfortable with, let them know I don't have that type of experience and I don't feel comfortable and I don't feel safe to practice there. So once I got linked up with an agency, I got linked up with a recruiter. Next thing that I did is I made sure that I got everything situated for me to go over to California. So one of the things that I love about travel nursing and one of the benefits for me is being able to relocate without the full commitment of moving, right? Like there's not a lot of opportunities, not a lot of careers that allow that, but travel nursing does. So one of the things that I really wanted to talk about today is leveraging that the leveraging working as a travel nurse in order to create different streams of income and doing different things that you are interested in and different things that you can really explore your creativity with. And that is how I even started with my blog. So once I started working as a travel nurse, I got to California and I began to really, figure out what it was that I was doing and really started to go step by step and kind of get my feet wet, right? That is when a lot of times when we're doing what we do, we don't realize that we're actually doing something that other people would be interested in. And like I mentioned with Rachel, the suggestion was given to me to go ahead and launch a blog. So for me, it was so important for me to share my experiences. And it started off with Instagram. It started off with a platform on Instagram where I began to talk about what my experiences were. And some of the experiences that I was having is just finding like what gym to go to, the grocery stores that you're that are within the proximity of your apartment. And all of these different things are things that people don't really think about. And I know that there's like a huge influx of travel nursing contracts right now, especially with the pandemic. But travel nursing has been a thing even prior to the pandemic, right? It's been around for a very, very long time. And like I said, right now, if you go on Instagram, if you go on TikTok, if you go on YouTube, there's so many people sharing information about their experience and different things that they've been able to do. And I know personally some people that have been able to go work as a travel nurse, and they're able to get in there, get their assignments done, stack cash, and then they're be able to invest that money into whether they're starting a blog, or they're able to start a clothing line, or an online platform, or digital products, or different things that they get into. And a lot of times I think, we have to get out of the mindset of putting ourselves in a box. And for me, I really didn't have any intention of ever exploring entrepreneurship or business ownership or anything. I was one of those people that thought that I was going to go to school, graduate, get a job at an amazing company, and then, spend time with my family, and work would kind of be at work, and home would be at home. That is what I that's what I thought I was going to be do. That's what I thought I was going to be doing. But that saying that says we plan and God laughs, that's literally like my life. So for me, once I got into travel nursing, the it's like the light bulb went off, and it clicked in my mind, like, what can I do to kind of like create this level of freedom that I was experiencing with travel nursing. I had never in my life had the experience where I was able to have autonomy over my time, have autonomy over my schedule or my finances. As far as negotiating pay, like, forget about it. I had never had an experience where I was able to really feel confident enough to negotiate my pay. So those are some of the skills that I garnered while I worked as a travel nurse. So if there's any of us here that are thinking about like going into side hustling or business ownership, go ahead and drop a one in the chat and let me know if that's something that you've ever experimented with, or if you don't want to get into side hustling, or if it's not something that you ever thought about before. Let me know why. Let me know what some of your hesitations were, and why you don't want to. And it's not to say that everyone should get into side hustling. That would be ignorant for me to think that everybody should do the same thing. But I'm always curious to know, like, what are the reasons? What is the hesitation? I was doing some reading, and one of the reasons why people don't get into side hustling or business ownership is the fear of failure. And so, for me, like, I had nothing to lose. Start an online platform and do Instagram, like, sure, why not? Because if it didn't work out, like, what did I lose? All I'm doing is sharing my story online. And so for me, it's such an important thing for us to like think about what it is that we want. What is our 1, 5, 10, 20 year plan? What does that actually look like? And so while I was working out in California, the light bulb really began to go off, and it really began to click, like, wait a minute, there has to be other ways that I can create the same type of lifestyle that I'm experiencing as a travel nurse. So I mentioned that I started the blog, and thankfully, I had a college friend of mine that I reached out to, and she was able to really just share some gems. Her name is Monet of the Traveling Child. She's on Instagram. She also has an online platform with her website. She has a YouTube, and she was able to kind of share her journey with me and explain to me what it was like for her to start a blog, and how she started that blog, and how she's been able to create a stream of income from it, and now it happens to be her full-time job. And so that really, really piqued my interest, not only because I you can make money sharing your story, but the fact that you can create money online. that was a new concept for me. And maybe some of you are already used to blogging and creating digital products in the online space, but for me that was a new concept. Growing up, going to college, going to work, working your 30, 35 years, 40 years, whatever it was, and then retiring after, that was kind of the lifestyle that I had submitted myself to, and I had already committed myself to doing that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not here to say everybody should quit their jobs, work for 2 years and quit your job after, and we shouldn't go to work. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is that travel nursing kind of opened up my mind and understanding that there are other ways for us to create a living for ourselves other than going to work. When I say going to work, going to like an actual company, going to an actual hospital, utilizing our stories, utilizing our talents, our creativity to create different ways for us to financially support ourselves. So if, with the blog that started in April 2019, and while I was working as a travel nurse, I decided that I would run a marathon, and I went to Hawaii, and I ran a marathon there. And why that's important is while I was running this marathon, I had also worked on launching a podcast. So I launched a podcast in December of 2019, and I thought that it would be an amazing extension to the blog. So the blog then opened the door for the podcast. And it was during that time, both the blog and the podcast, I had an opportunity to kind of interview different people and hear their stories as they shared their stories, and was able to kind of tie that in to my travel nursing journey. So I talked to Monet, like I said, about her blogging. I talked to to people about mental health. I talked to people about finances. And so I had different interviews that I conducted in order to provide value to the audience and to the community that we started to create online. So from the blog, we went into the podcast, and from the podcast, we went into short-term rentals. So as travel nurses, we have the front row seat of being able to know what is it that we're looking for housing. And so while I was working, my first assignment, I utilized company housing. And when I used company housing, I kind of like thought that I would go ahead and go from company housing, and I would use my stipend and would get an Airbnb. And I had a terrible experience at the time. It ended up like not losing all of my money. That's a whole story for another time. But I ended up losing my money because the Airbnb situation did not work out. And it was with that experience that I was like, you know what? I want to create a rental experience that would tailor to travel nurses. That was the original idea. But what we ended up doing is we ended up hosting on Airbnb instead. And so what I want us to take away from today, if we don't take anything else away, is utilizing our 3 day or our traditional 3 day 12-hour schedule. One of the famous sayings that we hear, one of the famous quotes that you hear is that you work your 9 to 5 and you build during your 6 to 10 or during your 5 to 9. Well, with us, if you're working a traditional hospital schedule, we're not working a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 typically. Now, I do understand there are some nurses that work in a doctor's office setting, in which at that point, maybe you are working 5 days a week. But if you're working a traditional 3 day, 12-hour shift, let's say you use 1 to 2 days for family time, self care time, whatever, because we are not, hustling and bustling and not taking any time off or taking any time for ourselves. That still allows us to have 1 to 2 days where we can explore different things that we like. So for me, exploring blogging was one of the things that I did with my time off. And then starting the podcast was something that I was able to explore during my days off. And then exploring real estate and rent short-term rentals, that's something that I was able to do during my time off. One of the things that I want us to do as nurses is to leverage. I want us to leverage our schedules, our lifestyles, our resources in order to attain time freedom, location freedom, and financial freedom. It is something that is so important. And I'm going to share kind of like a personal story. For me, when I got into nursing, I will never forget how I had a supervisor tell me, Um, and again, I'm not entitled, but I had a supervisor tell me that I didn't deserve to go on vacation because of whatever reason. And I just remember that feeling of like feeling stuck and thinking like, well, that's not right. Like, how can you determine whether or not someone deserves vacation, especially if it's something that we were already planning ahead of time? And, if COVID taught us anything else, it was that nothing is guaranteed. Even with our secure nursing jobs, people were getting laid off and people were unable to work. Some people had families that were sick and they needed to take 3 months off. I had that experience in 2020 when I completed my last assignment before I started my staff position. I lost my grandmother and I took 2.5 or so months off. And during that time, I thought to myself, because I didn't have the short term rental at that time, and at that time, I hadn't monetized my podcast, and I was still trying to figure out the blogging world. Like I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't want to come on here and make it seem like I have it all together and I have this blog that's making 7 figures and I have this podcast that's making all of this money. No, I am still figuring it out. But I took the step to start figuring it out. I started to think outside of the box. And I think that is so important. And like I said, in 2020, I had to take some time off. And again, I had to take some time off again mid 2020 for quarantine. And during that time, I was like, well, how amazing would it have been for me to have had something that was bringing me regular money, regular income? It was great that I had at that point attained some level of time freedom, but I hadn't attained no level of financial freedom. And so, working as a travel nurse, we're able to leverage sometimes some of those higher contracts. And like I said, I did travel nursing pre COVID. So, the contracts weren't exactly the way that they are now, as far as like the amount of money that they're offering, but it was still more than what I was getting as a staff nurse, right? So immediately I was able to double or triple my income. And so that by itself, that opened up my eyes. And I don't want to come off as if I'm making it all about money. No, again, this is about leveraging our resources, leveraging our lives as nurses and travel nurses to create a life by design. That is literally what we're talking about. So, time freedom, location freedom, and financial freedom is part of that, right? And so, as a travel nurse, I was aggressively working towards those financial goals. I wanted to pay down debt and I wanted to save. And by doing that, it allowed me the avenue to be able to buy my first property and start on Airbnb. So here we are in 2022, right? And I'm working as a nurse 3, 4 days a week. I have the blog that I'm still working on. I have the podcast, and now I have the Airbnb. I got a little bit of money trickling in, and it feels amazing. But one of the things that I thought was so important is it's one thing for you to be able to figure things out. It's a beautiful thing to be able to pass it on to other people because other people might be trying to do the same thing that you're doing. Drop a 1 in the chat if you are one of those people that go online and look for resources. If you're like me and you check out YouTube University or you check out Google University to kind of figure it all out. And like I said, people are using TikTok and Instagram, Facebook, all of these different avenues and all of these different communities in order for them to start to figure out what it is that they want to do as well. So, one of the takeaways that I want to leave with all of you today is for me, when I got started, I reached out to someone who knew more than me, right? I reached out to Monet. She was a blogger. I reached out to Sarah Gaines. She is a travel nurse. She is a former travel nurse that has the 6 figure travel nurse course. And if any of you are interested in any of the things that I'm mentioning, I have interviewed Monet. I have interviewed Sarah. I have interviewed AJ of AJ Mobile Money and talked about finances. I have interviewed Tofiki, who is an amazing nurse who is creating, who him and his partner, they've created seizure pads, right? No more blankets on the bed. I have talked to Sarah of She is Scrubs and have talked about nursing. All of these different people, I talk to them because I don't know everything. I do not know everything, but when we utilize the online space, let's say if you want to get into blogging, let's say you want to get into podcasting, reach out to the different communities. There are people who are doing it. I think it's so important for us to reach out to people who know more than us and to really learn and glean from them, right? And this time that we have in 2022, we have these phones. We have these phones, right? We can use it. Of course, I almost dropped my phone. We can use it and we can connect with people. We can use it and we can network with people. We can use it and really create a community for ourselves. And I know for me, I was working as a nurse and I felt like I don't even know what I'm doing. I've talked to these people and I've connected with them now. But in the beginning, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing and I feel alone. And I was able to find an amazing community online. I went on YouTube and I binge watched Erin on Demand. I was able to find her channel online. It kind of like popped up. I could remember in California, I was sitting on the floor and I kind of just binge watched her videos, and she was talking about branding and creating a business, and she was kind of like documenting her business online. And so I like binge watched all of her videos. And then from there, I found out she had an online community known as the eBrand Club. And so I jumped into the eBrand Club and I've been able to learn. I think the biggest thing that we can do, the biggest disservice that we can do is at least is not taking the first step of at least trying. At least trying. What does it cost us to at least try? And if we try and what we tried leads us to another opportunity, why not? For me, if next year I stop blogging, I didn't lose anything. I still have my podcast. And let's say I stop podcasting, I still did not lose anything because by starting off with the blogging, it at least got those creative juices flowing, right? The idea of being able to share resources online, create digital products online, which I haven't created digital products yet, but that is something that I'm planning on doing. All of those different things, they kind of started off with like just an Instagram platform. And then like I said, if I stopped podcasting, I didn't lose anything because it is what led me to then being able to go into the short term rental space, which I absolutely love. So, going into the short term renting space, like I said, we are working let's say if you're doing overtime 4 days a week, right? Let's say we're doing that. 1 to 2 days of the week, you're researching, you're doing inventory, you're interacting with your guests online, you're learning how to delegate, how to outsource, because of course we cannot do all of these things alone. Eventually, you research, you create these businesses, you side hustle, and then eventually what happens is maybe you create a team or different people that you can work with. And so all of these different things you're building the life that you want, your life by design on your days off. And I know like this may not be revelatory, but guys, it was revelatory for me. Like I said, this is not something that I grew up around. You know, my mother is from the beautiful island of Haiti and she worked extremely hard. And for us, college, it was you're going to college. And I'm so happy that she motivated me and encouraged me and inspired me to do that. But business ownership is something that was new to me. I didn't really grow up around it. I didn't know anybody that had done it. And like I said, blogging was something that I didn't even understand. If I'm being very honest with you guys, I I started a blog, but still did not really understand how it worked. I didn't know what SEO was. Like, what is an SEO? I didn't know that. I thought a blog was just kind of like you go on there and you type a few things and people would just find you. I didn't know that there was an actual technique, that there were keywords and different things that you're supposed to put in your blog post for people to find you. And this is what I mean by leveraging, taking that time. And like I said, I'm not saying for you to work 24 hours, 7 days a week. I'm saying taking 1 to 2 hours on your days off to explore and see what it is that you even like. Are you good at sewing? Are you good? Do you have a creative mind? Maybe can you launch a clothing line? Can you maybe connect with someone and begin real estate and rentals and different things? Like, as nurses, we have some of the best attributes for us to create different businesses and side hustles, right? We know how to delegate because we do it at the bedside. We know how to multitask because we have to do it all the time. We know how to work short staff because we do it all the time. And so, all of these different attributes that we have as nurses, we can leverage those things and create different things that can create different streams of income. So, what are we saying in the chat right now? I want to check in with all of you guys. Again, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you again to the Gypsy Nurse community. I really appreciate it. This is something that I'm clearly passionate about. And I think the reason why I'm passionate about it is because, guys, I haven't made it, right? I have not made it. I am still figuring it out and I'm sharing it as I'm figuring it out. But that is the beautiful thing about life, right? Like I'm inspired by people's stories. I think about Jeff Bezos and Amazon. Like he started in his garage and people thought it was a stupid idea. But look at where we're at now. I think probably all of us use Amazon. And I remember even reading like the story of how Instacart got started because I use Instacart all the time. And he had started so many different things before Instacart actually took off. Like I think just giving ourselves the opportunity to be creative, like it's a beautiful thing. So let's see what we're saying in the chat here. So in her world now says you can do anything you put your mind to, and I agree. You really could do anything that you put your mind to. Our limitations really do start in our mind. If we say that we're not going to do it, we're not going to do it. I mean, if you go on Etsy, there are so many different people selling things on there that you would think like, how did they start a whole business like creating name badges or reels, like badge reels? But there are whole businesses selling badge reels and doing different things, people using their creativity in order to create a life by design. See what I did there? So are there any software suggestions app that you use to manage your social media platforms? Yes, I use later.com. It's kind of new to me, but when I started the Instagram platform, so one of the things that you benefit from starting is that it gives you more opportunity to learn. I was getting overwhelmed with social media. Social media is a full time job, and shout out to all the influencers out there who are doing it as a full time job. I learned that planning your stuff ahead of time is very important. I was kind of just posting on the whim. I didn't have any type of social media strategy and I was getting overwhelmed. And I still get overwhelmed sometimes, to be honest, guys. I'm like I said, I'm still working and figuring it out. But I'm committed. I am committed to figuring it out. So I use later.com is what I use in order to plan my social media posts. And they have a link in bio feature that you're able to actually add links to your post. And so that was really revelatory for me. I found this out like last year, literally within the last few months. And so you're able to link your social media posts, your podcast posts, anything you're able to link on there. So that is what I use. Steve says, thank you for sharing the information with the travel nurse community. Thank you so much, Steve, for showing up and for engaging with me. This is something, like I said, I'm very passionate about. And if any of you like any questions or anything that you have that maybe you think about after we're done talking, please feel free to DM me. Like I respond to my DMs, slide in my DMs, ask me questions and I'll be more than happy to share whatever it is that I have. Because more than likely I've written a blog post or I have a podcast episode about it that I could send it to you. I could send those resources to you. And I do have a travel nurse checklist. It's like a quick and dirty travel nurse checklist. If you're an aspiring travel nurse and you want to get into travel nursing, please feel free again to slide into those DMs and send me your email and I'll be more than happy to send that travel nurse checklist to you. So Rachel says sometimes just getting started and out there is more important than waiting for it to be perfect. Yes, one of the mantras and one of the affirmations that I said to myself and that I continue to say to myself is progress is better than perfection. So making progress is better than being perfect because guess what, guys? We're not going to be perfect. As a matter of fact, when I planned on coming in here today, I had pages and pages of notes. You guys probably cannot see it. I have not looked down at these notes, probably not even once, because progress is better than perfection. Coming on here and just sharing my story and sharing my experience with all of you was more important than me reading this piece of paper word by word, line by line, verbatim. So just getting out there and getting started is more important than being perfect, because you're not going to be perfect. Even our corporations, our hospitals that we work with, I know for a fact that things go down behind the scenes that maybe isn't very good, or but they have people behind the scenes to kind of put out those fires. So if you want to start on Instagram, something so simple as Instagram, start the page. And if no one engages, oh well. Oh well, but at least you started the page, and at least you're being able to experience and experiment and see, is this something that I even like? Do I like posting? Do I like sharing? Do I like the camera? Do I like taking pictures of myself? Do I want to even use the online space as a means to make money? Or maybe like you start with blogging and then you realize that maybe I don't like to write this much. I don't want to start a blog. Or you think, oh, I'm going to start a podcast, and then you're like, I don't like to talk that much. So again, progress is better than perfection, and starting is better than not starting at all. Thank you so much for In Her World Now. Thank you so much. Steve, where do I get my energy? Many nurses talk about the need to completely relax and recharge. I'm so glad that you mentioned that. I am a huge advocate of self care. So while I'm over here, like, the formal travel nurse, side hustler, whatever, I think it's so important for us to get into a routine with our self care. So what I have done is I quarterly take time off. I cluster my days at work, and again, we work 3 days a week. So if you work 3 days at the beginning of the pay period and 3 days at the end of the pay period, you have all those days off in between. So I make sure January, April, July, and October that I take some time for self care, and then I take time for me to take care of myself even in between then. And self care for me is not necessarily me spending all of this money and going on some island, right? It's staying home. It's putting my phone on do not disturb. It's taking a little bit of a social media break if I feel like I need to. it's it's acknowledging my feelings, acknowledging, how do I feel? Do I feel like my energy is low? Am I Is my patience a little bit shorter than usual? Am I a little bit short with my answers when people are talking to me? I try to really understand what it is that I am feeling, and I try to be in touch with how I feel in order to know what I need to do to alleviate some of that stress. As nurses, guys, we're at the bedside and we're doing so much, and we're working with people, and we're giving so much of ourselves, and it can really weigh us down. It really, really can. So self-care for me is, like I said, putting my phone on do not disturb, trying to sleep, winding down, drinking water, staying hydrated. I'm actually drinking some water right now. Staying hydrated, eating foods that are nourishing to our body. Now, I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I eat some junk food. You know what I mean? But for the most part, I do try to get some fruits and get some vegetables in. Spending time with family, spending time with loved ones. And one of the things that I wanted to mention about travel nurses, in a very unique opportunity that you have as a travel nurse, is being able to focus on work. So if you have a 4, 8, 12, 13 week schedule or contract, you're able to focus on those things. And then if you wanted to take 1, 2, 3 months off in between, you can. And you can use that time in order to take vacation, in order to take care of yourself, in order to work on that business or that side hustle. And so, one of the things that I experienced as a travel nurse is being able to make work be work and let my time with my family be my time with my family. That is that time freedom that you experience, right? That's that time freedom that we're able to experience. So thank you so much for saying that I'm inspiring. I think I don't know if it's Katia or Katya. Let me know if I'm saying your name right. But thank you so much. And I love sharing my story. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And yes, TikTok is the new Google. Instagram is the new Google. You pretty much can go and find out anything that you want to know. You can go on there and find the answers for it. Thank you so much, everybody, for all of these different things. So I want to make sure that I'm not missing out on anything. I mentioned that I use a lot of resources online. I mentioned that, the blog and the podcast gave me an opportunity to talk to people who knew more than me. And so, the same way that I was using the information that they were giving and sharing it with the community, with my community, the vintage traveling nurse community, it's the same way that I was gleaning from them too. I was able to pull from them too and learn and I was able to apply those things that they were teaching me. And so, guys, if you're wanting to start something and you feel like no one can understand what it is that you're wanting to get into, find a community to help you on your journey. And if you can't find anyone in person, jump online and I promise you you'll find a community online. There are so many different communities and different support systems, different type of like small mind, not small mind, mastermind groups, small groups, different people that you can talk to kind of share what it is that you're wanting to do and to kind of glean from people that are wanting to do the same thing. So, finding a community, finding a tribe, finding kind of like that support system as you're getting started, even with nursing, like having a support system while I worked as a nurse was extremely important for me. And that's what's kept me at the bedside because if I'm being honest, there's been many a times where I'm like, what is going on here? And when you're working in an environment where you're short staffed and resources seem to be short and you don't feel like you're being heard and you don't feel like you're being valued, sometimes having that support system to kind of help keep you grounded, recentered, and focused, that has been extremely helpful. And it has been the same thing with side hustling too. Finding that community to kind of keep me grounded and keep me level headed and to walk me, help me um, to not jump off the ledge sometimes because I'm like, what am I doing? Like when I started with Airbnb, it was one of those, it was a beautiful disaster in the beginning because I had started with Airbnb in the middle of a pandemic and I was having a hard time getting things, getting inventory, getting orders, placing orders, and then waiting several months for things to come in. And it was a beautiful disaster that I love so much. And I'm so grateful that I have it. But again, starting it took that first step. It took starting to even be able to see what it is that I didn't know and what it is that I knew, what my strengths and my weaknesses were. And so, a lot of times when we are at work, we we at times cannot explore our creativity. And so I want to encourage all of you guys to take the time to explore your creativity. Write something down. What is it that you want your life to look like? What is it that you want your life to look like? Do you want more time so you can spend with your children? Do you want more time so you can um, be at home alone? I don't know. Like, do you want more time in order for you to vacation and travel? And I know traveling's a little sticky right now, but is it, do you want to do more traveling? What do you want your life to look like? I encourage all of you guys to dream. I encourage all of you guys to take the time to explore what your desires are, what it is that you like, what are some things that you like to do, what are some things that you're interested in, and really begin and really like spark that interest again. Let yourself dream, let yourself kind of see what it is that you like, what it is that you like to do, and what do you want your life to look like in 20 years. Do you want to continue to work at the bedside, or do you see yourself doing something else? And if side hustling is not for you, leveraging nursing in order to do something else even within nursing is another thing that you can do. There's so many different specialties and so many different avenues within nursing that you can get into without having to go back to school. You can get into telehealth, you can get into consulting. So many different things now that we're able to do as nurses, and we can take our talents away from the bedside if that's what we want to do, or if you want to keep a PRN position while you side hustle, that's an option as well. So many different things that we're able to do. Oh, I said your name right. Good. So many things that we're able to do, and I encourage all of you to just take the time to start, take the time to take the first step. So I'm going to have Rachel come back on and just share with me any questions or anything that I tried to like go through the comments and see if there's anything that I could answer. But if there's anything that you wanted to ask me, I'm more than happy to answer them.
No, like it was so amazing. I loved hearing about Hawaii and your marathon. Like that's just amazing in itself. Like
Yeah.
running. So, and then doing everything on top of that. And I wanted to ask too, because at the beginning you were talking about like after you got your self care taken care of, then you were ready for travel nursing. When did you know that you were ready to like take on travel nursing? Because I know you were just talking about, just do it. But when did you know that's a big leap than
Yeah.
just like starting an Instagram page? No, you were like, yep, it's time.
So I felt it. And I think the reason why I took that time off is because I was trying to figure out, was I having an issue with nursing or was I having an issue with my environment? Because, for me, nursing was already a second career for me. I didn't mention this, but I had gone back to school and I had worked as a nutritionist before and I decided to go into nursing. And then 3 years in, I found myself fizzling and I was trying to figure it out. I'm like, what's going on? I just, invested all this time and money to nursing school. And now 3 years in, I'm thinking about going to law school. What is going on? Like, so for me, just taking that time off and really digging deep and seeing like, what is the problem? Why am I feeling overwhelmed? Why am I feeling anxiety? Why am I having panic attacks? Like, I'm very transparent with my experience. And I feel like our transparency sometimes can help other people feel normal. And I was having a lot of anxiety and I felt overwhelmed. I felt burned out and I didn't understand why. And one of the issues I was having, and now in retrospect, I could say I wasn't sleeping enough. I wasn't working out. I wasn't eating the right foods. I wasn't taking enough time. So taking that time off really revealed to me what it is that I needed to do. And just switching up the environment, going to a different hospital on a different unit. My unit was amazing. I had amazing preceptors and different people that were there supporting me. But it just got to that time where I was like, I need something different. And so just taking that time off, it was kind of like a gut feeling for me. And it was 3 months. And at that point, I was like, okay, what are you doing? Are we going back to work or are we going back to school or what? So for me, it was just gaining that clarity. And that's why I encourage for people to take that time off. And if you're not in a situation where you could just take a month off, that's fine. Take a week off or take 2 weeks off. Like with our schedule, working 3 days, 12-hour shifts. If that's your schedule, if you're working in a hospital setting, you're able to kind of manipulate the schedule in order to have time off without you utilizing your PTO. So just having a sense of self and just being clear on what I wanted to do and what I wanted my nursing career to look like allowed me to know that it was time to take the leap into travel nursing.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, very well said. That makes like so much sense, especially just knowing like in your gut, you're like, yes, it's time, and
It's
you know,
time.
and I think too, you're probably just like I had the word in my head when I was thinking it, but just kind of like a free spirit and just kind of like restless soul. And
Yeah.
some feel like a lot of people like you are gonna be like, well, I do want to change my degree 5 different times, and I do want to have 8 different degrees, and sometimes maybe it is just a little side hustle to kind of get that side of your brain just like satisfied maybe, and you don't need to go get all these degrees and do all of that, even though if you want to definitely could, but
Yeah.
that definitely makes sense. And then two, you're talking about the tribe and the community, and I was writing a little note about that too, and those exact words I was thinking. And when people have babies, it always is like, oh, it takes a village to raise them, and then sometimes it does take a village to get travel nurses on the right track or nurses on the right track, because you're going to need that mama nurse, you're going to need that best friend nurse, you need all those different types of nurses. And so I was really glad that you talked about that.
Yeah. I mean, and the gypsy nurse community is a community. It's also a community. And so it's so important, I think, for us to get out of um, this mindset that we're alone. It may feel like you're alone. I've had moments, especially as a travel nurse, I felt alone. I was out there, I was physically by myself. I didn't have anybody there. I think if you have the opportunity to travel with someone, travel with a friend, it's always amazing. Some people travel with their partners, some people travel with their pets. And so it kind of cuts through some of that loneliness that you may experience. But what that time and that solitude gave me is it gave me an opportunity for me to create a routine for myself. And it allowed me to explore, like I said, this idea of side hustling. And, for me, growing up, if you wanted to change your career, you went back to school. And so that's what I defaulted to before I got into travel nursing. I thought, I'm going to go back to school. Maybe that's what I need to do. And so being able, I think for me, the reason why um, I'm so like enthusiastic, I guess is the word that I'm looking for about this, is because I know that I cannot be the only person that was thinking like very single minded, if that makes any sense. I can't be the only person that thought like I'm in a box. I know some people that get into nursing and after a year they quit. And that's fine. Like if you want to quit, you are able to do that. But what would have happened if somebody just would have talked to that person and said, like, do you know that you can get into telehealth? Did you know that you
Mhm.
can become a travel nurse? And some people work 6 months out of the year and they're off 6 months out of the year. Especially now with some of the contracts that we're seeing, you could work 6 months out of the year and make what you were making
Yeah,
working a full year as a staff nurse. So, some of the people that have prematurely quit, I just wonder if they had a community, if they had people around them championing them and encouraging them, would they be so quick to quit? And maybe a percentage of those people may have felt overwhelmed and just decided that nursing wasn't for them. And if it's not for you, that's fine. I think you should leave the bedside if you don't like it, because we are dealing with people's lives, and we're dealing with people's families and their loved ones. And so we should be in a at least a healthy state of mind while we're taking care of people. And that's why I think it's important for us to take time off and to take care of ourselves. However, one of the things that we got to keep in mind is like, we're not limited. We are not limited. We do not have to operate in a single box. You can start a business and you could literally stay PRN and work as you're able to and as your business allows you to, or you can completely leave, or you can leave for 2 3 years and then decide you want to come back and go back to the bedside. So there's so many different options out there for all of us. We just have to be creative sometimes.
definitely, definitely, definitely. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much. If there's, sorry, choking a little. If there's anybody if has any other questions, please put it in the comments. And then two, I did put her Instagram and website in the comments. So if you guys want to reach out to her at all, the conversation does not have to stop here ever. Just reach out. If you can't find her or anything like that, just reach out to us and then we will point you in the right direction. I want to thank you again so much for coming on. So much good information. Got me inspired. I know it's got everybody in the audience inspired. So
Thank you.
um, we look forward to hopefully we can have you on again.
For sure.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you.